Everyone, thank you for coming this evening. This is a very important piece of the process. We've had an opportunity to interview many candidates. They've already gone through 2 rounds of interviews with a very inclusive group of stakeholders that included parents, staff members, administration, you name it. It's probably pretty daunting. We had probably 12 people on the first round and 12 people on the second round. And tonight you're going to get to meet two of the finalists that we're very proud to put before you. Today, you're going to meet Jamie Parsons. He's going to explain some of his background and his history. And then the people that are here, you'll be able to give your feedback this evening. Those people who are watching at home, you'll be able to give your feedback tomorrow. We'll be sending out a link with the videos and the feedback form because your feedback is very important to us. On March 7th, everyone involved in the first selection committee, second selection committee, and these feedback forms are all going to be reviewed, and that will help narrow it down to the candidate that's put on the nomination for the school board to consider on March 17th. And so I have to say we're on schedule. We're looking really good, and I'm proud that we have 2 really qualified candidates. It is about finding who's the best fit for our needs, and that's why it's really important to listen to all the voices and all the stakeholders in this process. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jamie introduce himself, and he has a presentation for you as well. Thank you, Jamie.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. It's my pleasure to be here, really. Happy snow day tomorrow, or maybe not so happy. I know for me, I'm not looking forward to cleaning yet another snowstorm. My vacation's almost over. I teach in Massachusetts. I know that up here the vacation is just beginning. So enjoy the snow day tomorrow for sure. So it's my pleasure to be here tonight. And it's really been a pleasure to go through this whole process. I've enjoyed meeting everyone in this interview process. I can tell you, well, let me get started here with this. I've been on many principal committees before, and I know that the process is long, and a lot of people are working really hard to put it together. It's a big decision, and so I'm so happy to be part of this process. But one thing is I was reflecting, Mr. Furbush said, you're going to have 15 to 20 minutes to talk to folks. And I said, okay, about what? And it's an open forum, so anything that you want. So I was kind of reflecting, and I was thinking about my time spent on committees in the past, and I oftentimes would leave these candidate forums really wondering who the person was, not getting a good feel for will this person be a good fit, not really knowing who they are as a person, what they stand for. Sure, I would say, yeah, okay, they can do the job, check off the boxes, very good, but I didn't really, I felt like I never really connected with many of the candidates. So I was thinking about how I could bring some of that to you all tonight so that you can leave here with some takeaways about me personally, about where I come from, why I'm here, my philosophy, my values, so that you may be able to better decide if I may be a good fit for your district. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a few pictures, a few slides, and then we can chat, and hopefully you'll get a better understanding of who is this guy standing in front of you. So my name's Jamie Parsons. That's been made clear at this point. I come from Groveland, Massachusetts. What you're seeing, this image here, is actually a plaque that I use in my office. All of our staff, I work at in Melrose, beautiful city of Melrose, Mass, Melrose Veterans Memorial Middle School. And as part of a way to build a more inclusive climate and culture in our building, we have these plaques that all of our staff, administrators have on their office doors. So this is my plaque, and I wanted to share that with you because it helps give you an insight into who I am. So I live in Groveland with my wife and 2 sons, Braden and Wyatt, 11 and 8, and they're running us ragged, but we love them, and this year we've been skiing. Has been our thing this year at Bradford, and it's been fantastic. It's been so much fun. And there's my goofy dog. We have 2 dogs at home. In Groveland, where I live on the same street that I grew up on. My sister lives next door. My parents' house is in the middle. We were fortunate enough growing up that we had a lot of land. You'll notice in the center here, that's my mom and dad, Linda and Daryl. And I put them there because of the role that they've played in my life, obviously, not just as my parents. They're the reason why I'm here, literally, but figuratively as well. They were my first best teachers. I grew up on a small farm, learned how to ride a horse when I was 8. We had cows, chickens, turkeys, goats. So my childhood was spent with my dad working on machinery, tending to the animals, growing a large garden. And so that's really where I got my affinity for the natural world. I am a teacher first. I'm a high school teacher. Spent 12 years in the high school classroom teaching biology and chemistry. Shocker, I grew up knee-deep in animals and plants and things. And so I naturally pursued education. My mom was a lifelong teacher. She finished her career 18 years at Whittier Votech in Haverhill. And she was really the sort of creative side of our family and really an inspiration also for me to get into teaching. Now, why EPIC? Why am I here? Well, I can say that when I saw the posting, I was immediately curious and excited. Curious because my connection to Epping is kind of simple, but it's authentic. My dad, among other things, as the ultimate backyard engineer, he was a truck driver. That was how he made his money, his living. But he was from Idaho, and he was actually a stock car racer in his younger days. And so when we moved to Massachusetts in the late 70s, we immediately found Star Speedway. And I spent many Saturday nights with mom and dad sitting on the bleachers at Star Speedway because it was something that he loved and I grew to love, because who doesn't love fast cars that are really loud? And so I had a lot of fond memories. In fact, I've kept that tradition alive with my boys. We've spent the last couple of years, many Saturday nights, sitting at Star Speedway. It brings me back to my childhood. So I immediately had that connection when I saw EPIC. And on top of that, I saw, wait, middle high school. Isn't that interesting? That is like the perfect combination of my experiences. I have 14 years of experience working in high schools, 12 as a teacher, 2 as an administrator and assistant principal. And I have spent the last 9 as a middle school assistant principal. And I love the middle school kids. I think I'm a better middle school administrator than I would be a teacher. I consider myself a high school teacher. Tons of respect for the middle school teachers. But that's definitely my favorite demographic, grades 6 through 8. Such a pronounced period of growth and development. So exciting to work with kids at that age, provide them with some support and guidance while they make some not so good decisions, and we support them and bring them back up again. So I love working with the middle school kids. The last 2 things there are icons. I went to Framingham State and did my graduate work at Gordon College in Massachusetts. So that's me, kind of personally, where I come from. Now let me talk a little bit about core values. The things that I value that shape my work pretty much every day and how I operate in life. Provided kind of a little bubble diagram for you to indicate that some of these kind of expand and contract, but this is really what I stand for. And I thank my parents for the learning and growth part of this, because they were the ones that exposed me continuously through opportunities to learn and grow at home. And so I've taken that into my professional life, and I love to learn and grow every single year. One of the reasons why I'm here is because I'm interested in the next professional growth and the next professional challenge. So I do really value learning and growth. And in that process, all connected, I'm a pragmatist. As I'm a scientist, I look at the world in a real practical way. I make observations. I tend to be kind of an introvert, and that's not antisocial. Introversion for me means that I like to take in information and I like to collaborate with other people before I draw a conclusion. So that decision-making process related to the scientific method is very important for me. The other part of my values in here that I want you to notice is the humor part of this, is that humor is a really important part of who I am. I like to have fun and I like to laugh. And I think schools, especially as we emerge from this pandemic, hopefully we will be able to have more fun and laugh together as we work towards accomplishing our goals. Because if school is not fun, why bother? I think school has to be fun while balancing the pressures of academic rigor and social emotional dynamics. We have to have fun. Honesty, respect, equity, and patience. Patience, obviously in this line of work, we all need to have patience. So those are the values that make me who I am. These guide what I do every day. And oftentimes I will reflect on them throughout the course of the work year and make adjustments and see how I can become better. So those are my core values. So just the next slide, this represents sort of the philosophy with which I approach a leadership position, my leadership philosophy, if you will. When I was doing my graduate work, I read some work by Peter Senge, his work called The Fifth Discipline, and it really resonated with me. And so it has since guided how I take on a leadership role in my building currently. His concept is called the concept of the learning organization. It's really from what he calls the fifth discipline. I've modified it so that it kind of meets my needs, but the goal is the same. The concept of the learning organization is that individuals that are able to have a universal, agreed upon commitment to growth and accomplishing a goal are able to be more impactful and powerful than an individual. So the learning organization is about working together with a group to accomplish a goal or to accomplish and build a shared vision of the future. How I use this in my day-to-day is there's got to be a commitment, there has to be collaboration, working together, and then the two most important, the value of trusting relationships. I find that to be one of the most important parts of accomplishing and building our shared vision is that people need to trust their leaders. So that students, staff, families, I work together and partner with all of those stakeholders in order to build a common goal. So the trusting relationships, to me, that's really a cornerstone of my philosophy, is building trusting relationships, that we are all doing this together. We're all doing something to do what is best for our children. The roles that we have in schools, I am so grateful that I've been able to work in schools for 23 years, because the responsibility is so great that families are trusting us with their children, right? They're trusting that we're going to make the decisions that are in the best interest of their kids, right? So that trust is huge, right? It's very, very important. Now, the last part of this, and the most important, I would say, without a doubt, with respect to philosophy and how I lead and run a building, it's around communication. The communication part of this is crucial. And I know I've worked with many folks over the years where communication has been a challenge. And there's nothing more frustrating than when I hear, well, that wasn't communicated to me, or I didn't know, nobody told me. Even when parents are like, well, I didn't know that was happening. So I work so hard to maintain open and honest communication. And communication is a really important skill, and it's one that I have become better at over the years, but am continuing to grow and advance, because it's a very complicated, complex skill to be an effective communicator. That just doesn't mean that you're just talking to somebody. It means that you're proactively engaging in two-way discourse with people. I think a lot of times people misunderstand a really important part of communication, and that's the listening part, right? In order to be an effective communicator, you have to be a really good listener, right? Because communication is a two-way exchange. It's not just, this is what's happening, it's both. Tell me how you feel, listen, and then let's make a decision together. I could use the example, or a example in general of my line of work right now. I am an assistant principal, so most of my job is spent dealing with discipline, right? So discipline, behavior in general, is a form of communication, right? It doesn't matter when the kid throws a chair across the room, that is a form of communication. And so I treat discipline and behavior as a way to, in a form of communication. And many times our middle school aged kids, right, are growing and developing and are having some challenges with respect to personal expression and communication. And so a lot of times the discipline issues that we see pop up are the result of some lagging skill with respect to how to communicate, right? An area in the classroom that they're lagging in. Maybe they can't see the board. Maybe they don't understand the passage. Maybe they have difficulty writing. And a lot of times behaviors manifest as a result of the inability to communicate. So just to wrap up with the philosophy part of this, and then I'll talk a little bit about how this applies to my day-to-day, is that the communication is the absolute critical component, I think, to a successful leadership and administrator. Next slide. How does this, sort of the general question is, how do I apply these to my work day, to my daily work? So I'm going to provide you with a couple of examples really quick. In my district, we are a competency-based district on paper, but we haven't got there yet with respect to competency-based report cards. We actually have built it from kind of the ground up. Our competency-based initiative started in 2017, and we characterize it as personalized learning. And it has a few components: universal design for learning, social emotional learning, flexible learning environment, student learning progressions. These are all components of our personalized learning because we believe, and I believe firmly and strongly, that we need to think about the jobs that kids are going to have in 10 or 15 or 20 years. We cannot plan for the types of jobs that they're going to have. What we can plan for is the skills that they're going to need for those jobs, right? So in that light, that is kind of the driving force behind our personalized learning initiatives, is that we're providing students with opportunities to engage in learning with their peers and demonstrate skills to us that they're going to need in their adulthood, right? Collaboration, critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills. These are all the skill-based types of things that we're able to do with our personalized learning process. The work that I have been involved in specifically the last couple of years has been around the social emotional component and the UDL component. Specifically, pre-COVID now, almost 3 years ago, I sat down with a group of teachers. This was after we'd had many hours of professional development devoted to universal design for learning. We refer to it as UDL. And, you know, teachers were kind of scared and nervous about what does this look like in the classroom? Am I going to have to change my teaching style, that kind of thing? And so I sat down with a group of teachers and I just challenged them. Okay, how about this? How about you all agree to engage in some universal design for learning practices in the classroom and invite other folks to come in and see you? And so this was developed into a complete, I believe in distributive leadership. So this developed into a complete teacher-driven model where it was peer observation. They placed a pineapple on their offices or their classroom doors, and that meant that they were open to visiting, having other staff members visit. And it really started to gain some traction. And I can honestly say since then we have now have a lot of staff that are actively engaged in this process of peer observation. COVID kind of put a wrench in that. The SEL component in practice, what I did a couple of years ago is I was in charge of our Safe and Supportive Schools Committee, and our Safe and Supportive Schools Committee was a group of staff members that took a look at what we were doing in the building with respect to providing a safe and supportive environment for our students. What do our inclusive practices look like? And they found immediately, for instance, we changed our welcome signs. They were all in English. We have 27 languages spoken in my building. So we changed all of our welcome signs to reflect the most common languages that are spoken in our building, and immediately created a more safe and supportive school for us. We added a chime at the end of our period, 4 minutes prior to the end of the period, that indicated, it was novel, it was different than the bell. It indicated the stop of the teaching and learning, and it allowed our teachers to engage in some mindfulness activities, recognizing that our middle schoolers in particular suffer from a lot of anxiety and executive functioning challenges. And so we stopped the class 4 minutes prior to the bell, allowed teachers to engage in a mindfulness minute and some organizational activities so that we would ease the anxiety that kids had moving from point A to point B. And then I'll just wrap up quickly is that one of the things that I've been working on this year is reshaping our student support team using our UDL design. And we've been able to now have students engage in a UDL learner profile form. We took that data and we're able to disseminate it to the teams. The teams now are able to modify their instructional practices to reflect the needs of their students. And then if there were some difficulties that students were having with respect to progress, they can submit a UDL referral to our support team, which I'm in charge of the student support team. And then we come up with action steps and then communicate back with the teams with respect to implementation of Tier 1 supports. All right, so I'm getting the indicator that I'm just about out of time, but I'm happy to field any questions that you might have when we are in our breakout sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Same thing. Thank you, everyone, for coming. You're going to meet our second candidate now, Chris Mazzoni. He's going to have the same 20 minutes to introduce himself, and then you'll have opportunities to ask questions of both candidates afterwards. I just want to repeat again a little bit about the process. We had a committee of 12 members who helped with the first selection, and that was made up of parents, students, board members, staff members, administration, and they narrowed it down to 3 candidates, just to let you know. And in the second round, we had a second group of inclusive stakeholders, and they narrowed it down to 2. But they had an easy job because one of them withdrew. So unfortunately for us. However, what is very fortunate for us is that we have 2 great candidates with us this evening, and they have their resumes are posted online as well. So please go have an opportunity to look at their cover letters and resumes. And as I said already, these videos will be made available to all of my parent group that I email. Some say too frequently, but I will email them out, and you'll be able to have feedback forms and get to give your thoughts on it. But I'm not going to take Chris's time; it's his time. Chris, please introduce yourself and have your time.
Thank you. As Phil said, I'm Chris Mazzoni. I am currently assistant principal at Londonderry High School, but I'm a resident here of Epping. I see some familiar faces. I see others that are less familiar. But I think it's really important to underscore the fact that the faces to me are familiar is one of the reasons why this is the right time to jump into this position and what I can bring to it, because I've been watching from afar. I've got 2 kids in the district next year. One will be a 9th grader, one will be a 6th grader. And if we're going to bring our unification efforts together, what better groups of kids to start with than incoming 6th graders and incoming 9th graders? And we want to really start to unify both with families, both with kids, and any of the things that we're going to lift off of now that we're not focusing on things that aren't relative to education any longer. Hopefully, we're going to do this together. So I'm going to talk a lot about why, not why my qualifications, I'm going to talk about why this is the right time and the right fit for us to get together and do something really good for our schools. I've spent the last 22 years in public education. Initially, I was a middle school teacher. I have 11 years of classroom experience with a pretty eclectic population. The Exeter district, a large district. Then I was fortunate enough to head to a smaller district as my first administrative experience over in Newmarket. The principal at the time and myself worked together to bring Newmarket from what was a good school, but we became a really great school. We became an excellent school. We became an excellent school in spite of some of the challenges we had to our facility. We maintained an accreditation that was difficult to do when you had certain parts of your building condemned at times. And I literally mean condemned. There were times we couldn't use parts of the building. But we never let that detract from the task at hand. So we got together, we had good community engagement, and we said, hey, this is what's gonna happen for kids. And we always put kids at the center, and I've carried that with me. I then was fortunate enough to become the principal of Newmarket Community Senior High School in 2015 through 17. We were recognized as one of the top schools in U.S. News and World Report for the quality of our outcomes for kids. And I'm really proud of that because we did it with a lot of hurdles in the way. But very similar to that, our demographics are very similar. The size of our school is very similar. One of the things that I won't have to worry about here, hopefully, is any building catastrophes for the foreseeable future. But the similarities are so strikingly similar that I couldn't be more excited. This is a perfect time to jump in. You now have, which I have not had the experience in a long time, of stable administration at the district level. For the 8 years I was in Newmarket, I think we had 6 superintendents. The district currently is undergoing a superintendent search, so it's really nice to have, some continuity at the central office. Hopeful that both as a resident and as your next principal, we're putting together a team that can collaborate within the district and amongst buildings too, for that continuity of learning for kids. So those are the reasons why it's really important. Obviously, we've all been through a lot in the last 3 years. Our kids have been through a lot in the last 3 years, and the focus hasn't always been on the kids. And what you'll hear me say a lot is, there will be a lot of battles to fight. There'll be a lot of attacks. But what I won't engage in is attacks of a personal nature. We need to get together and attack the problems that are in the way of our kids. We need to attack the hurdles that get in the way of our kids being successful people that come out of Epping High School with a diploma that means something, that says if I decide to go into the armed services, I'm prepared. If I'm going to a 4-year college and university, I'm prepared. Or if I'm going out into the workforce, I'm prepared. We're preparing kids right now. When we were in school and looking around the room, we're, I think, all pretty similarly aged, if I'm being polite. There was a real push that everyone had to go to college for a while. And we kind of poo-hooed the trades. Then, before that, the trades were really important. And now we're seeing there's nobody in the trades anymore. And there are some trades that are really important. Right now, we're at a place where we can't predict the jobs we're preparing kids for in the future. Right now, the kids that graduate in the next 5, 8, 10 years are going to have jobs we have not yet imagined. So we have the obligation and the opportunity to make sure that the skills that we impart on them and the knowledge and the ability to think, interact, survive, and develop some grit, they have to be ready for anything. My parents were the generation that stayed in a job for 30 years, collected a pension, and went. This group of kids will likely change jobs 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a lifetime. We have an obligation to make sure we teach kids how to think, not what to think. We have an opportunity to do that because we've just rebranded ourselves to middle high school. So we're now one unit with one central administration that follows an administration that's now, solidified at the top, through some good decision-making at the school board level, down to the administrative level. Now we'll be on the same page with the school down the street. As someone who has experience and able to talk to and with the community, I think that's a real thing we can leverage to bring things together. There are things that the new principal of the elementary school will need in terms of support for how to talk with the community, how to get things to happen, and what better place than to look across the parking lot with your partner in crime over here. So I'm really excited for that. We've talked a lot about, and there's a slide in here when you go through your slideshows and they say, you should put in a quote right here. And this was actually the slide that was supposed to be a quote, but I didn't want to do that. But we talk a lot about Epping being the center of the universe, and I couldn't find who originally said that. I've heard rumors that it's because mathematically we are. I don't think any of those things are true. But I think the road to excellence should start right here. We could be the center of the universe, and it starts at the junction of 101 and 125. Let's stop pretending we're just a place where we used to stop at McDonald's when we went to the games at UNH. We're beyond that now. We can respect the pieces of the past that are important, respect the traditions that were here, but let's really start preparing our kids for the future with a good foundation of the things I talked about before. We can renorm as a community. come together and identify ourselves and the outcomes that we believe are best for kids. That is not something that the principal or the superintendent should do alone. That's something we have to do together. What do we believe is the best for our kids, and how will we get there? Again, we'll come at it from different angles. We will disagree, but we'll attack the problem, not one another. I'm somebody who, I'll sit down at a table, even if we know we don't agree. I won't argue with you. We might argue, but I won't argue with you. We might argue what's right and what's wrong, but we're gonna do it respectfully, and we're gonna talk to one another respectfully and with decorum. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, and I'm not gonna talk all about politics, but I do remember this. I remember looking at the president at the time, who was Ronald Reagan, who had one very strong set of belief systems. The Speaker of the House at the time was Tip O'Neill, who had another very strong set of beliefs. Those folks were able to treat one another with respect and civility to get things done for the people. That's what we have to do here in town. We have to refocus. We're not fighting about what side we're on. We're attacking the problems together. I'm excited to do that. I will tell you right now, there is nobody more qualified or dedicated to facilitate the work on behalf of this community, because there aren't a lot of middle high school principals. There aren't a lot of middle high schools. Not only am I one, but I was a successful one at my last stop. And that's what I want to bring here. There's another thing that tells you that your slide should have some kind of percentage or some kind of data. So I made one up. I really think that we should expect that 100% of our kids can learn and succeed. It's really not negotiable. I mean, are we okay saying most of them got it or some of them got it? That doesn't fly with me when they walk across the stage, and it doesn't fly with me in the classroom. It didn't fly with me when I was a teacher, and I won't accept that any less than that. We got to strive that 100% of our kids are competent with literacy and numeracy skills. We'll do our part here at the high school, but knowing there's a continuum of learning, we're going to work with our admin team at the district level to make sure that's happening pre-K through 12. We're identifying kids who maybe are really successful or who are struggling, and we will monitor them through and through the whole time they're with us. We don't pass them from one school to the other and say, I'm done with this one, it's the high school's problem now. It really does take a village, and we've got a pretty good village here. We expect 100% of these stakeholders to believe the same things. When we say stakeholders, that's you in the audience, that's you at home, that's our teachers, that's every single person that interacts with our kids. We have to believe that 100% of our kids can do these things. We have to know we won't get there in a year. We might not get there every day, but we're always working towards that goal of 100%. Again, the unification piece is important. The right person, the right time. And I'm telling you, right now is the time. I'm so excited to get to work. I already want to start thinking about the things that we have to do now and that will last in the future. Should this go the way I hope it goes, I want to start sitting down with the teams and as it's appropriate, say, okay, we've got some positions open for next year. What are our outcomes that we're looking for? And when we do that, will the interview processes match what we have identified as our outcomes? And as appropriate as it is to be involved in those things, I want to be there. I want to talk about this fable because I've had a lot of experiences in my life in the educational realm that have been both public and private, that have been right and wrong, but at the drop of the hat, I've always sort of kept this to mind. So an old Cherokee fable, and I don't have the author. There's an old Cherokee who's teaching his grandson about life. And he says to his grandson, a fight is going on inside him. It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One represents evil, anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance. You kind of get the motif, all the best. The other one, he says, is good. It's joy, it's peace, it's love, it's serenity, humility, and kindness, and all the good stuff. When the grandson thinks for a minute and says to his grandfather, which one wins? His grandfather says, the one you feed. So we're going to feed the right wolf. We're going to get it done for kids. We're going to attack problems, not one another. And we're going to decide what our outcomes are and get after it. How? Engaging in those purposeful and respectful dialogues, including stakeholders. Even if it's somebody you might be invited to the room, if you don't want to hear their opinion, it's really important to hear their opinion, because it helps you understand why their minds are made up the way that they are, our minds are made up the way they are. We then develop empathy then we can get to a solution. We have to develop a cycle in everything that we do to evaluate our practice, make sure if it needs revision, we're revising it, make sure we're refining things, keep the things that work, move away from the things that don't, but have really honest conversations with ourselves. I can remember, depending on the experience of your kids, not here, but in other places I've been, you might have one kid that did the American Revolution 6 times, and you might have another kid who only did it once. Those are not the outcomes we're looking for. We're looking for consistency. We're looking for, again, that continued evaluation, revision, and refinement. It applies to all the facets of what we do, whether it's how we're going to take care of our buildings and grounds, whether it's academics, athletics, but we have to do it in a way that's respectful, and we have to feed the right wolf. I threw a lot at you. I'll do the Q&A thing at the end. That's a much more comfortable experience for me. I'd rather sit at a table with you than stand at a table and talk at you, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris.